Love makes you blind. I used to believe that trust was unbreakable, that silence meant peace, that a smile meant honesty. But the truth was always there, beneath my feet, a worn carpet by the door, thinned by footsteps I never questioned. If I had noticed sooner, would it have changed anything? Probably not. I never paid much attention to the small details in our home. The little changes, the subtle shifts. Life had a rhythm, predictable and comforting, like the ticking of a clock. Wake up, work, dinner, sleep, repeat. Love, after years of marriage, becomes something steady, something you trust without question. But trust is a fragile thing, and once a crack appears, it spreads like rot beneath the surface. It started with something trivial. A worn patch on the carpet near the door. At first, I barely noticed it, just another sign of life in a house well lived in. But one evening, as I stood by the door, I found my gaze lingering on it. The fibers were flattened, frayed at the edges, as if someone had stood there far too often, pacing, waiting. I frowned. It didn't make sense. We rarely had guests, and my wife, Anna, wasn't the type to loiter by the door. She was always in motion, graceful and efficient. I tried to shake off the thought, but the image of those worn fibers stuck with me. A small thing. Insignificant. Or so I told myself. But then there were the other things. Anna had always been a creature of habit. She left the house at the same time each morning, arrived home predictably, moved through her days with a rhythm I knew as well as my own heartbeat. But lately, her rhythm had changed. Some days she lingered before leaving. Other nights she came home later than usual, offering vague explanations about errands or last-minute work meetings. And then there was her phone, once left carelessly around the house, now always within her grasp, screen tilted away from me. I told myself I was being paranoid. That marriage meant trusting, not questioning. But paranoia has a way of sinking its claws into you, whispering doubts you can't unhear. I started watching more closely, taking mental notes of inconsistencies. The faint scent of cologne I didn't own clinging to her clothes. The way she'd smile at her messages, fingers moving quickly before the screen went dark. The way she seemed elsewhere, even when she was right in front of me. And then, the carpet. That damned carpet. One night, as I sat on the couch, I found my gaze drifting to it again. The fibers were even more worn than before, an unmistakable path of repetition. Someone had stood there. Again and again. Not just once. Not just twice. A pattern. I waited until Anna was asleep before I did something I never thought I'd do. I opened our front door, stepping outside into the cold night air. I turned back, looking down at the floor, at the spot where the carpet was worn thin. My mind traced the footsteps that had come and gone, over and over. Someone had stood here, hesitated here. Someone who wasn't me. A deep unease settled in my stomach. I wasn't just imagining things. Something was wrong. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to know the truth. But the truth was already there, beneath my feet. Doubt is a quiet thing at first. It lingers in the background, a whisper in your mind that you push aside. But once it takes root, it spreads. It changes the way you see everything, every glance, every word, every silence. At first, I told myself I was imagining things. That I was just overanalyzing. That after years of marriage, small changes were inevitable. People change. Routines shift. But the more I ignored it, the more it pressed against my chest, tightening like a noose. The worn carpet by the door was the first sign. A patch of fabric, frayed and flattened, just in front of the entrance. It wasn't like that before. I was sure of it. We never had guests, no one visited, and Anna wasn't the type to stand by the door for long periods. But someone had been standing there, again and again. I noticed other things too. Anna had always been predictable. She left at the same time every morning, came home at the same time every night. But now there were delays. Excuses? Last-minute errands. Sudden work meetings that kept her late. She was careful with her phone too. It used to sit on the kitchen counter, forgotten for hours. Now, it was always with her, screen tilted away, locked the moment I came near. And the scent. The first time I noticed it, I thought I was mistaken. A faint trace of cologne that wasn't mine. It clung to her clothes when she walked past me. Something deep, musky, unfamiliar. I wanted to ask her about it, but what would I say? That she smelled different? That her perfume had changed? It sounded crazy. So I stayed quiet. I watched. One evening, she came home late again. I was sitting at the kitchen table, pretending to scroll through my phone. The door opened, and she stepped inside, shaking off the cold. "Late night?" I asked, keeping my voice even. She hesitated, just for a second. Then, she forced a smile. "Yeah. Work ran late." I nodded, watching her. She set her purse down, ran a hand through her hair. And there it was again, that scent. Faint but undeniable. I clenched my jaw. Later that night, as she slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling, thoughts racing. My gut told me something was wrong. Every instinct screamed at me. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I needed proof. The next morning, after Anna left, I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked her phone. My hands trembled as I scrolled through her call history. At first, nothing seemed out of place. The usual names. Normal conversations. But then I saw it. A number. No name attached. Just a string of digits. Repeated calls, always late at night, always brief. My stomach twisted. I sat back, gripping the phone. My mind raced, piecing things together. The worn carpet. The excuses. The hidden phone screen. The scent of another man on her skin. I put the phone down carefully, like it might burn me. That night, I came home early. I sat in the living room, pretending to watch TV, but my ears were tuned to the door. I was waiting. Watching. And then I heard it. Footsteps outside. Anna's voice, soft, almost pleading. Another voice, deeper, responding in hushed tones. My heart pounded. I turned my head slightly, just enough to see the entrance. The door was open just a crack, Anna standing there, half hidden by the frame. She was saying goodbye to someone. I couldn't see him, but I heard the weight of his steps as he moved back, hesitated, then finally walked away. Anna stepped inside and shut the door behind her. She didn't know I was watching. For a moment, she stood there, back against the door, exhaling slowly. Then she straightened, smoothing her hair. And then she turned, and saw me. Her body stiffened. Her eyes flickered with something, shock, maybe guilt. But she recovered quickly, forcing a smile. "You're home early." I nodded, my eyes never leaving hers. "Yeah. Thought I'd surprise you." Her fingers twitched slightly, nervous. "That's nice." She hesitated. "I was just outside for a second. Getting some air." Getting some air. I didn't say anything. She walked past me into the kitchen, her movements careful. I noticed how she didn't ask how my day was, didn't meet my gaze. She was avoiding me. I let out a slow breath. The pieces were falling into place. The carpet. The phone. The scent. The man outside. I wasn't imagining things. Something was very, very wrong. I didn't sleep that night. Anna lay beside me, her breathing slow, steady. Peaceful. As if nothing had happened. As if she hadn't stood by that door only hours ago, whispering to someone in the dark. I turned my head, watching her in the dim light. She looked the same as she always had, soft features, hair spread across the pillow, lips slightly parted. But she wasn't the same. Something had shifted between us, whether she admitted it or not. I had spent days, weeks, ignoring the signs. Making excuses. But the moment I heard her outside, speaking to someone in hushed tones, all my doubts hardened into certainty. And certainty brought anger. A deep, quiet anger that settled into my bones. By morning, I had made up my mind. I would confront her. Underscore 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 underscore. She was in the kitchen when I walked in, her back to me as she poured coffee. She didn't turn around when she spoke. "You're up early," she said lightly. "So are you." I didn't say it. Instead, I leaned against the counter, watching her. "I couldn't sleep." She finally turned, mug in hand, offering me a smile. But I saw it now, how practiced it was. How careful. "Everything okay?" I almost laughed. I exhaled slowly, letting the silence stretch between us. She shifted on her feet, waiting for me to answer. And then I said it. "Who was at the door last night?" Her smile didn't drop immediately. She blinked, head tilting slightly. "What?" "I heard you," I said. "I saw you. You were talking to someone outside. Who was it?" For the first time in weeks, I had the upper hand. I watched her carefully, waiting for the cracks to show. She hesitated, just a fraction of a second. But it was enough. "Oh," she said too casually. "That was just a coworker. He gave me a ride home, and we were just finishing a conversation. That's all." "A coworker," I repeated. She nodded, taking a sip of coffee, her hands steady. "Yeah. Which one?" Her grip tightened on the mug. "Barely noticeable. But I noticed. You don't know him. Try me." Her lips parted, but no words came out. She was lying. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Not just suspicion anymore. Not just theories. Cold, undeniable truth. I clenched my jaw. "Say his name." She let out a small laugh, shaking her head. "Jesus, you're being ridiculous. Say his name, Anna." Something flickered in her eyes then, something sharp. She set her coffee down a little too hard. "I don't have to explain myself to you." "Yes, you do." My voice was quieter now, more controlled. "You're my wife." She folded her arms. "And you're my husband, not my warden." "Then tell me the truth." She stared at me. I could almost see her thoughts racing, calculating. Searching for the right words, the right excuse. And then, something in her shifted. Her shoulders dropped, the fight draining from her. She looked away, rubbing her temple. "I don't want to do this right now." "Yeah?" My voice was hollow. "Well, I didn't want to stand in my own home wondering who the hell has been walking through my door while I'm gone. But here we are." She flinched. "Good." Silence. Then, finally, she spoke. "I made a mistake." My stomach twisted. I had prepared myself for the truth, but hearing it out loud still knocked the air from my lungs. I swallowed. "How long?" Anna closed her eyes for a second, then looked at me. "A few months." "A few months." I turned away, gripping the edge of the counter. The worn carpet. The late nights. The lies. All of it, stretching back months. I took a deep breath, but it did nothing to steady me. "Who is he?" She hesitated again. My hands curled into fists. "Anna. A friend," she said. "That's all he was at first. I swear." I almost laughed. A bitter, hollow sound. "At first?" I echoed. "That's supposed to make it better?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. I shook my head. "So what now? Do you love him?" Her breath caught. And that, more than anything, told me the answer. I let out a long, slow exhale. She looked at me then, eyes pleading. "It wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't mean for it to. But it did." She wiped at her eyes. "I don't know how to fix this." Neither did I. I turned my gaze to the door, to that damn carpet. The fibers worn thin from footsteps, his footsteps. A silent witness to every moment I had missed. I closed my eyes. Something had been broken between us for a long time. Maybe I had ignored it. Maybe she had. Maybe both of us had spent years pretending we were fine. But now, there was no pretending. I looked back at her, my voice quiet. I don't think you can. I always thought that if something like this ever happened, I'd explode. Yell. Break things. Demand to know every detail. But betrayal doesn't come with fire, it comes with silence. A deep, hollow silence that settles inside you, stretching wider with every passing second. Anna stood across from me, arms wrapped around herself, waiting for me to speak. She had already confessed. She had already admitted everything. And yet there was still this unbearable tension between us, like we were teetering on the edge of something irreversible. I tried to speak, but the words got caught in my throat. She took a step closer. Say something. I looked at her then, really looked at her. The woman I had loved, trusted, built a life with. The woman who had stood by our door, whispering to someone else. What do you want me to say? My voice was barely more than a whisper. She exhaled shakily. I don't know. I didn't want it to happen like this. Like this. Like this. I let out a short, bitter laugh. So how did you want it to happen, Anna? Did you picture a gentler version of this moment? One where I just understand and tell you it's okay. That's not what I meant, she said, her voice breaking slightly. I shook my head. Then what did you mean? She was silent. I turned away, gripping the edge of the table. The weight of everything pressed down on me, suffocating. My mind raced, replaying memories that now felt tainted. Every kiss, every laugh, every moment that had once felt real, were they ever real? Or had they been fading long before I noticed? I swallowed hard. Was it worth it? Anna's breath hitched. No. Don't lie. I turned back to face her. If you're going to stand here and ask me to listen, then don't insult me by lying. She bit her lip, eyes glistening. I don't know. I let out a slow, shaky breath. You don't know. She wiped at her face. I didn't do this to hurt you. Then why did you? She shook her head, eyes pleading. I don't have an easy answer. That was the worst part. If she had looked me in the eyes and told me she had fallen in love with someone else, I could have hated her. If she had said she never loved me at all, I could have walked away with some kind of clarity. But this uncertainty? This regret? It only made everything hurt more. I ran a hand over my face. Do you love him? She hesitated. Again. I already knew the answer. I nodded slowly, feeling something in my chest crack open. I see. She took another step closer. I still love you. My jaw clenched. No. You don't. I do. Her voice was desperate now. What we had, it still matters. I looked past her, to the front door. To the worn carpet beneath it. The proof of everything I had ignored. It mattered to me, I said. You don't destroy something that matters to you. Her face crumpled. I never wanted to lose you. Then you shouldn't have let him in. She flinched, a sharp inhale like she had been struck. But I didn't feel satisfied. There was no victory in hurting her, just more pain. I turned away, pacing the room. My mind swam in memories, in broken pieces of the past. I remembered the first time we moved in together, how she insisted on picking out the curtains because I had terrible taste in colors. I remembered the Sunday mornings spent making pancakes, the way she always stole the first bite of mine. I remembered the way she used to look at me, like I was everything. And now, she couldn't even meet my eyes. How long have you been planning to tell me? I asked, my voice quieter now. She sniffled. I wasn't. I turned sharply. You weren't? Tears ran down her face, and she didn't even try to stop them. I was scared. Of what? She hesitated. Of losing you. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You lost me the second you made that choice, Anna. Her breath hitched. I don't want it to be over. I stared at her, feeling something inside me crumble. She looked so small now, so fragile, as if she was just as broken by this as I was. But I refused to believe that. She had made her choices. She had opened the door and let someone else in. She had watched as the carpet wore down from his footsteps, knowing exactly what it meant. And she had said nothing. "You don't get to decide that," I said, my voice hollow. "You already decided when you chose him." Her lips parted, but no words came out. I turned back to the door. That damn carpet. I had stared at it for days, weeks, feeling something gnaw at my gut. And now, I finally understood what it meant. I looked at her one last time. Then I stepped over the worn fabric. And I walked away. The silence that followed my departure from the living room was deafening. It stretched across the house, wrapping around me like a suffocating fog. Anna didn't chase after me. She didn't call out my name. Maybe deep down, she knew that no words could fix what had been broken between us. I stepped outside, my footsteps sharp against the gravel of the driveway. The cold air hit me like a slap, but I barely felt it. The numbness inside me had taken over. There was nothing left to feel but the crushing weight of reality. I walked aimlessly, each step carrying me farther away from the home we had built. The home that no longer felt like mine. It was just a house now. Empty, hollow, with the faint traces of something once warm and real, now scattered across the floor like broken glass. My mind raced with thoughts. How had we gotten here? How had I missed all the signs? It wasn't just her betrayal, it was mine too. I had let her slip away. I had been so focused on the quiet rhythm of our life that I failed to see the cracks widening beneath the surface. I should have seen it. I could have seen it. But I didn't. The shame of it all settled deep within me. I had allowed myself to be blind to the things that mattered. My own neglect had allowed space for someone else to slip in, to fill the void that had been left by years of complacency. I stopped walking, standing still in the middle of the street. The cold wind cut through my jacket, but I barely noticed. I looked up at the sky, the first few stars beginning to appear as night fell. It felt like the world was mocking me, offering beauty while I was drowning in the wreckage of my life. I thought about Anna. The woman I had loved. The woman I had thought I knew. She was just as lost as I was, trapped in her own tangled emotions, trying to hold on to a love that had slipped through her fingers long before I found out the truth. But I couldn't be lost anymore. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine, that I could forgive the unforgivable. Maybe forgiveness would come someday, but not today. Not in the face of everything that had been shattered. I had to make a choice. I could walk away from all of it, the pain, the confusion, the bitterness, and start over. I could leave Anna behind and never look back. I could take the first step into a future where I wasn't haunted by memories of betrayal. Or I could stay. But if I stayed, it would never be the same. The trust would never return. The comfort would never come back. We would always be fractured. Always be looking over our shoulders, wondering if the other was hiding something. I couldn't live like that. I couldn't live in the shadow of what she had done. The decision was clear. I turned and walked back toward the house, each step heavier than the last. I could hear the faint sound of the wind through the trees, but it felt like I was walking through a dream, like none of this was really happening. But it was. And it wasn't going to disappear. When I stepped back through the front door, the house felt different. Cold, even. It wasn't the warmth I had remembered. Anna was sitting on the couch, her head in her hands, quietly crying. Her sobs were soft, but they hit me like waves. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if I could say anything. I stood there, just watching her. She looked up when she heard me, her eyes red from crying. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. Please don't leave me." But I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't filled with the sharp, searing rage I had felt earlier. I was tired. I was broken. "I have to go," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Her face crumpled as if I had struck her, and for a moment, I felt that pang of guilt. But it wasn't enough to change my mind. This was the end. "I don't think we can fix this," I said. "Not after everything. I need to be away from you. From us." She didn't argue. She didn't beg. She just looked at me with those tear-filled eyes, silently pleading for something, anything, that could bring back what we had. But it was too late. The love we had was gone, and in its place was only this emptiness. I walked toward the door one last time, pausing just long enough to glance at the worn carpet. The spot by the door. The symbol of everything I had ignored. And then I left. I didn't know what the future would hold. I didn't know if I would ever be able to forgive her, or myself, for what had happened. But I knew one thing. I couldn't stay. Not like this. I had made my choice. And I had to live with it. The house is empty now. It took weeks before I could bring myself to start clearing out the remnants of our life together. The pictures, the trinkets, the shared memories, I had to put them all in boxes, storing them away like they were relics of a past life. A life that no longer fit me. I found myself staring at the worn carpet by the door one last time. The memory of Anna's footsteps, his footsteps, all of them, left imprints that would never fade. But now, they were mine to carry. Not hers. Not theirs. I didn't want to be angry anymore. I didn't want to hold on to that bitterness that had consumed me. But I had learned something in this process. You can't unbreak something that's shattered. And sometimes, the only way forward is to accept the pain and let it change you. I didn't walk away from her out of spite. I walked away because I had to. Because love, when it's betrayed, is never the same again. No matter how much you try to rebuild it, it always carries that fracture beneath the surface. Anna called once. Then twice. I didn't pick up. I wasn't ready to face her, not yet. I don't know if I ever will be. Maybe time will heal this. Maybe one day, I'll be able to forgive her. Maybe not. But I have to move on. For my own sake. I don't know where my life will go from here, but for the first time in months, I'm not afraid of the uncertainty. I'm not afraid of starting over. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most important thing I can take from this. The rest will come. But for now, the door is closed. Leave a comment with your thoughts on the story. And subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new interesting stories. See you soon.